Okay, this is going to be a series, no holes barred. I'll tell you everything I screwed up, every problem I have on a 1976 Trans Am Special Edition. I think it has every option, but it's in bad shape. So what's wrong with it? And why am I doing this video without any pictures of the car? I'll get into all those things. So the engine's frozen. The rear quarter is shot. I mean, it was folded back. It had been hit there. Car had been sitting out in the rain. It's been passed through a couple hands. Parts of the trunk are rotted. Parts of the floor pans are rotted, both sides. The cowl, parts of the cowl are rotted. It also been. I live in Washington, so this is a Washington car, by the way. I decided to see if this was the real deal car. You know, is this really a 76 special edition? Because they're not, at least in this car, they're not stamped special edition. But you can, I can't think of the name, but you can look it up. So I looked up the vehicle ID, and it is the real deal. I mean, it's got all the right stuff. It's got the gold bezel. It's got the 50th anniversary on the front fender decals. It's got remnants of all the gold trim all over it. But it's passed through a lot of hands, and people are looking for parts for their cars. And when I bought the car, I got a truckload of parts. It had to be towed home. I mean, a whole pickup truck full of parts. And in these parts are, this guy likes to work, this guy's thing, his hobby is Firebirds and Trans Ams. So I got a bunch of mismatched parts out of a bunch of different years of cars in boxes. And it's a mess. So that's going to be another part of this story, is how do you organize and figure out what you have. So let's go to the engine. The engine's frozen. I pull it, but I do some research. It is an engine. The transmission and engine is matching numbers. It is the original, but it's frozen, and it's been, top end's been stripped. There were some heads there, but they weren't bolted in. I looked it up. They were off of 454, I think 72 or something. But that doesn't mean they're better heads. That means for one thing, they're not the right heads. They're not the right period heads. They're 4x heads. I'm not exactly sure what 4x means. But I needed some 6x heads, so I went back to this guy. He had some 6x heads. Maybe they're the ones out the car. He didn't tell me. But that's my problem. So I got the year matching heads. I mean, I don't know how I tell that they weren't the right ones. Not that I'm trying to, not that I want to fool anybody. This is for me. This is a hobby. So I pull the engine out. It's frozen. I pull out the oil pan. It's got sludge, that much sludge around the oil pickup. You can't even see it. I've worked on some cars in my time. I've never seen anything that bad. So I clean the sludge out, and then of course, now I want to take the engine apart. Well, I can't get two of the pistons out. I just can't get them out. I use a hammer and a piece of wood, try to pound them through. Pound them either one direction or the other. But with the crankshaft in the way, you have to pound them out towards the intake. But I can't get the crank out because the engine's frozen, and I can't undo the caps because as the crank turns, it's at an angle where I can't get at the nut. So let's see, what do I do? Somehow I was able to grind them out, cut them off, get the caps off, pull the crank out. Oh, before I could pull the crank out, you can't. I couldn't get the torque converter off because the torque converter. Anybody that's put a torque converter on, at least in my experience, you got to be able to reach the nuts that would break it from the flywheel. Well, the torque converter was turned in such an angle, I could get 2 bolts, but one of them I couldn't get. So I ground that off. I got the torque converter off, and I got the flywheel off. Now I got the crank off. I get the pistons out. And now I can see there's a bunch of scoring on these two cylinders. Again, I'm trying to decide, what do I want to do before I go buying a bunch of parts? What is the smartest way to go? So I take it down to the machine shop, the engine, and I ask them to Magnaflux it. Well, it's good. And then I ask them about this pitting in these 2 cylinders. And it's finally determined that, yeah, we can save the block. Board 30 over. I had found the correct heads, the Magnaflux the heads. So now I say, well, just put it together. Usually I would take, not that I've done it a million times, but usually I would have them do the machine work and then put it together myself. But since so many pieces were missing, the head bolts were missing, the push rods were missing, the lifters are missing, it's all missing. So I find the big pieces, they find the little pieces, they get it back together. It probably cost me, not probably, it cost about $5,000 to put this engine back together. Now it's just sitting to the side. I decided to tackle the sheet metal next. Again, I'm not trying to throw money away, but I figured this engine is worth something. Somebody has a special edition. So I figured it's not a waste of money. So I cut off all the rot all over the car. The cowl's got like 15 spots that I got to cut out. I don't want to replace the cowl. It's just too much work. The trunk pan, I cut out the rot in the trunk pan. I cut out the rot in the floor pans. Then I go about fitting new pieces. I decide that I don't want to butt weld the pieces I can't see. It's just too much work. There's too many contours. Like one piece might have 6 or 7 contours. But if you just if you get an OEM type floor pan and you just cut it a little big and just drop it in, it fits really good. So then I went Harbor Freight, got a pneumatic punch, or you punch a hole in the metal, and then you can do like spot welds. Then I'll go over it with seam sealer later. So that takes care of the trunk. And the floor pan, same thing. The whole floor isn't rotted, it's just in certain areas for some reason. And the areas that were rotted are like under the rear seats. For some reason, water got trapped back there. There's plugs in there, but I don't understand why they put plugs in the floor pans. But they're plugged. I guess it's for when they dip. They must dip these cars, and then that way it can drain out. Anyway, I cut those out, and that's where the bracket that holds the rear seat is. Get them aligned. With the cowl you can see, so I got to butt weld these. And that's a process to figure out to do it the first time. And I shot some videos, but I'm new at the video taking, and they didn't turn out too good. I'm going to post some, but to make it simple, this is what I found out. Cut the rod out, get a piece of paper, lay it over the hole that you cut out because paper will bend to the contours. That way you don't end up cutting a piece of metal too small. Take that piece of paper over to your scrap metal. To me, that's the floor pan that I bought. Cut the piece of metal, bring it over, put it on your hole. This is where you want to butt weld. Now the problem I ran into is I bring it over and I want side is out. I want to cut now. Now I want to cut the hole perfect, but I can't mark the black. I try to scribe it with metal. I can't see it. Maybe it's because my eyes are old or something. So the best way I found out is you take this piece, you lay it on there, go around it with correction fluid. You know, the old type correction fluid that you use for writing, you know, when you make a mistake. Go around it, mark it with white. That stuff dries real quick. It's kind of sloppy though, so then after it sets up in about a minute, go around with a black felt pen. That shows up really good on the white, and then you just cut that shape out, and there you go. You have to do a couple fine adjustments with like an air sander or a jigsaw, air jigsaw, or whatever it takes. Oh, and by the way, when you cut these pieces, because I got so many pieces, I had to bend them to fit, which isn't hard. You just kind of lay it on top. You know it's big enough because the paper was big enough, and you just bend it and get it into shape the best you can. And I primed it with that primable weldable primer, but that doesn't work for me. I can't weld through it. So then I go back, grind around the edges, just enough where you're gonna so it'll get a good ground. I'm getting over bronchitis. And then you just make sure it fits as tight as you can. It'd be nice to have like a 30-second all the way around. Weld one spot to start, and then bend the metal a little bit, belt, and just work your way around till it fits. Let it cool down. Go back, keep welding. Go to your other spots you're fixing if you want. Grind it down with a wheel grinder. I don't know why I have trouble looking in the camera when I talk. It's like I have to see visions in my head. Or pictures in my head. So then I did that one time with a grinder, and that is, with a round grinding wheel on contours is almost impossible. So what I finally figured out is grind it down, your welds, grind them down, get most of it off. Then I went to Harbor Freight. I found a belt sander. It's like a let's see here. It's got belts like this. And the problem I found out is you need a good aggressive grit. So at first I bought a pneumatic. I took that back. I got electric because they have you can get a more aggressive sandpaper, which is like 60, and that works really good. So you grind it down as good as you can with a round wheel. Then you take this belt sander and you just, since it's flat, then you go around it, and it comes out really good. As for pinholes, you're going to end up with some pinholes. I mean, I went back over it 3 or 4 times trying to get all the pinholes, but it's just about impossible. So I'm going to have to go back over with some kind of filler. But that's where I'm at right now. And I'll post some videos of some of these lousy videos. I'll try it, but in the future there'll be better videos. And that's where I'm at right now. Looking at the screen, I got like 15 seconds left. So I think I covered everything. Oh, and to store it, I don't know if I said this, but I rebuilt part of the shop. Had a second floor. I rebuilt that, and all the parts are out of the boxes. They're on tables, and now I can see what I have. And that's it. This 1976 Trans Am Special Edition.